Welcome to the Franchise Woman Podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged. I'm Rebecca Monet, CEO and Chief Scientist at Zoracle Profiles. I'm here with my co-host, community advocate, speaker, author, and entrepreneur, Tracy Kawa. We have some very special guests today, Tracy. They are life partners and kingdom workers, Todd Recknagel and Kristi Mailloux. They are managing partners of Three20 Group, a private investment firm focused on franchise, distribution, and multi-unit investments. They have strong operational backgrounds and industry relationships. Three20 Group excels in situations where they can partner with founders, management teams, and co-invest with other investment firms to build a platform that will scale and generate long-term value for all business stakeholders. So welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, welcome to the show. So I don't know about you, Rebecca, but I would love to know how this successful and beautiful personal and professional love story began.
Well, Kristi and I were both in franchising, and we had been in franchising for, well, over 30 years, actually. So I was in the food business in the 90s and had sold out of that and came over and partnered in Service Brands, which was a company out of Ann Arbor that had Molly Maid, 800 Dry Clean, and Mr. Handyman at the time. And so that was about 2003. I became CEO of Mr. Handyman, and I had met Kristi, but we had not worked very closely together. And then about 2006 or 7, when Kristi became president of Molly Maid, the two companies worked a little bit more closely together. And so we learned to work very, very well together, and we're in similar business. Oftentimes say that we had brother and sister companies. And then Kristi never let me forget that she was running the larger company. Molly Maid was bigger than Mr. Handyman. So I left in 2011 to purchase a company with private equity down in Charleston, South Carolina. And about 2 years later, we were acquiring our largest competitor. And Kristi and I had become such great friends, and she's so phenomenal at operations that we wanted her to come down and partner and be a part of that acquisition. And so she met with all our private equity partners. They loved her, of course, who wouldn't? And then I had to let them know that I said, hey, we might be just starting to date. Kristi and I had been great friends, and we started dating in 2013, and the rest is history. I'll let Kristi carry the rest of the story there, or correct me where I was wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Take us from 2013, Kristi, to the wedding in 2017, right?
Sure. We did well in that private equity investment. It was outside of franchising, but once we sold out, we were looking for an opportunity to get back into franchising. And then we decided that we love the repeat recurring revenue models of like we had with Molly Maid. And we bought into a group of existing Massage Envy franchises. We purchased those where we had our homes both in the Michigan market and a couple just over the line in Toledo, and then in the Florida Panhandle. And we started with 7. About that time as well, we got engaged, ended up getting married in 2017. We were continuing to invest in the private equity firm as partners that Todd had mentioned was our partner in Charleston. And they were keeping an eye on us and continued to ask how the Massage Envy multi-unit group was going. And we had an opportunity to merge with 21 other units and have our private equity firm partners, Trivest, purchase in with us. We developed a very strong C-suite of team members that are out in the Phoenix area. And that was a great start for us over the course of the next few years. Just recently, we purchased, we were at 95 for quite a few years. And then just about 2 weeks ago, we bought another 36 units. And now we're up to over 131 units in that group. But in the meantime, we've had a great run at buying into other franchisors and multi-unit franchisees, and we've got great partners there as well.
I love this story, how the business and the romance was like this fabric that was being created, that you were like-minded business-wise, but it goes beyond that because both of you are Christians, and that allowed for this deeper, more meaningful relationship that was evolving. Can the two of you speak to this idea of being equally yoked?
Sure. Well, to be clear, we're not equally yoked. Kristi went to University of Michigan. I went to Michigan State. So we are a Spartan and a Wolverine. It's anyway, I'm sorry. I'll let Kristi address the equally yoked answer.
Well, our faith has been a very, very important part of who we are. And since we both led companies, you get two strong-willed people working together as not only married partners, but business partners who we consider ourselves equally yoked because we both have strengths in different areas, but we also have weaknesses in different areas. And I think our faith being the foundation of helping to be a strong part of the foundation of our relationship has allowed us to work into some difficult situations where we might have been having different visions for where we should go, but we decided that it's best to work within our areas of strength. And I work more on the operational and marketing area, and those are my areas of strength. And Todd does this more strategic and financial areas. And I think with faith as a basis, you have to turn it over to God to help you figure out how you best work together as partners. And through that process, we pray on it every morning, how we're going to work together along with our partners. And the faith has become an extremely important part of our foundation. And I guess we've always considered ourselves equally yoked because of our faith and because of our respect for each other and what each other offers in business.
Right. So almost how that would play out on a practical basis. If I'm more of a strategy or financial guy and I say, hey, I think we need to do this, I'm always out there dreaming. And Kristi being the operational anchor, that might mean, oh my gosh, that just means more work for me. And so then all of a sudden I'm like over here, wait a second, can't you see this vision? And she's over here, can't you see how much work this would be? And if you kind of take a moment, step back, and if you do pray on it, meditate a little bit and say, wait a minute, this is God's daughter that he blessed me with. She's been so phenomenal with operations, marketing. I want to see her as God sees her. And then if she says, stop, okay, this is God's son. This is one of God's children who has this vision. God put these dreams in his head. How do we work together? How do we listen? And so a lot of times we'll stop, slow down, back up, talk something through, come to an agreement. We've actually come to filters that the things we will do, the things we won't do, the areas we'll get into, the areas we won't get into. And it's actually helped us refine ourselves. So I'm not off in some dream world and she's not feeling like she's anchoring stuff down. We're actually working on pulling in the same direction. So just kind of a little bit of a practical way of how that kind of works and plays out. And it's been very, very effective for us. So
thank you so much for that example, because I was wondering how that, has a practical application. And it's almost like handing things over to God as mediator.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Well, Todd says he's a part of our investment committee. It's Todd, myself, and the Lord. And we actually asked for God to make the path clear through putting up barriers if a new situation or partnership isn't supposed to happen, or actually allowing it to happen by paving the path. And we rely on that greatly as we're making decisions. And we come to a neutral, because if we want it more than God wants it, that means that we're trying to take control. But by coming to the neutral path, it allows us to say, God, it's up to you, take it or leave it. And we've truly come to that basis and feel it gives you a lot greater peace knowing that you can live that way, that you're making the right decision, that God's involved in.
And again, practically speaking, we've seen some deals that we thought, oh, wow, this is really exciting. And we've seen them just not happen, be taken away, blocked. We've seen something that we wouldn't normally have seen, and then it just doesn't happen. And then we've had some unbelievable blessings of things brought to us that we completely, laid at his feet and said, it's up to you, Lord. And then all of a sudden it came together, and it came together on our terms. Not when I say our terms, the terms that God wanted to have. We knew what we thought we could do, but then all of a sudden the deal kind of came together, on the Lord's terms. And so again, that is a practical application that we've seen play out.
I love how this works. So I understand this idea of taking it to God. And basically he is, as Tracy said, the mediator, the inspiration, the guide, and then you guys execute. When we are talking about being equally yoked, how does that relate to the investments you choose to make? Is it also similar to that company, that individual complements what we do and we complement what they need? I mean, talk more about how that equally yoked works out there.
Yes, Todd talked about the filters that we have and whether we're going to agree. And both are through a Christian coaching relationship and a marriage coaching relationship, we came up with whether we'll say yes or no, the filters that we have. And part of those filters are whether we could see ourselves partnering with these people that would be a great fit with us. That's very similar to what you're saying, is equally yoked. But then God's also got to be in it, we feel, with it. Or we're not saying that we don't partner with non-Christians or non-people that have the same faith. That doesn't happen at all. We look at it as it's got to be the right partnership, and that could be anyone, as long as we feel they're the right people to partner with and God's allowing it to happen and saying, yes, this is a great deal to partner with. So in that way, it's got to pass our filters, but the people that we're partnering with are important part of that filter process as well.
Wow. What are some of the ingredients for an ideal partner, for an ideal partnership to happen?
On the filters, I don't have them right in front of me, but I'll try to think through some off the top of my head. We love the repeat and recurring model. That's one of the things that that we like. We think it brings a certain amount of sustenance, and it levels out an opportunity. The comment that Kristi was making, we have to genuinely like the people. Mm-hmm. So we've gotten into a number of opportunities where the people were, say, young and could use some mentorship. Didn't necessarily have to be Christians. Many of them aren't.
Todd, got them in front of me if you want me to help quickly.
Okay, let me just finish my point, and then if you want to go through. So we kind of call it, they need to be fairly jerk-free is what we say. That if we generally enjoy these folks and they generally enjoy us, you can kind of tell that chemistry. Life's too short to be tied up with folks that aren't that way. And Kristi, why don't you go ahead and go down some of the lists there?
Number one, it aligns with our vision and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Number two,
that's kind of feeding into people, multiplying multipliers.
Multipliers, yeah.
Yes, we love that God gives us the opportunity to multiply multipliers and has laid that on our heart as one of our strengths. Mm-hmm. Number two, we consult with our friend Jesus. Number three is we have to have a passion for the business. Number 4 is it moves the needle both financially, spiritually, or relationally, depending on the type of partnership. It could be a non-financial move with one of our ministries, but it has to move the needle so we feel like we're making a difference.
Make a difference is kind of that, yeah.
That number 5, we like, trust, and mutually care for the people involved, which meaning we watch them build relationships and see how they do with that to see if it would be a good partnership for us. We would have the potential to show out God's glory. Sometimes it's difficult to know that in advance, but that's a goal of ours while we're working with our partners. We make sure we gather all the facts, so we're not making a non-judgmental, we're not jumping to judgment right away, that we gather all the facts and come together to make a decision. We get to neutral, where we can take it or leave it, as we mentioned we need to get to, and then we wait for God to make the path very clear on where we should go. And those are the filters that we've agreed to and help us say yes or no to the opportunities when we're going to partner or not, both in ministry and in our business world.
Oh, wow.
So at that point, if it meets those filters as you've described them, then you go into what might be called sowing. You sow into that company, both financially and with your wisdom. Can you expound on that a little bit, what you mean by sowing? Because obviously that's the first step before we have a harvest, but tell me more about that.
Sure. So when we invest in a company, oftentimes our strength or the general area of companies we're in, where I think you mentioned it earlier in the introduction, some franchising, distribution, multi-unit companies, franchisor or franchisee, that, or some supplier companies that serve franchisors or franchisees. We're in a financial technology company. We've been in a cloud accounting, or I guess we're still in a cloud accounting company that serves franchising, and in an advertising agency that serves franchising. So we have a number of companies that have met that criteria. And oftentimes we will invest with a check out of our company. These companies tend to be sort of lower middle market company, which is kind of a private equity term that would be, a range of, say, a $25 to $100 million company. The lower middle market tends to be a little bit of our sweet spot. We're not huge with oodles and oodles of cash. We're a small private family office. And so we generally always partner with a larger private equity firm that we know and trust. And we've partnered with a number of them. We've mentioned Trivest and like Geneva Glen, Stonehenge Capital. We've partnered with Rourke Capital, partnered with Kohlberg and Company. So we've had a number of pretty prominent private equity firms that they might write the bigger check and kind of carry the deal, if you will. And then we go in as operating partners or board members in a deal or transaction. We help coach the C-suite. We recruit
C-suite.
We recruit. We help do strategy. Help help on a number of levels when we've been in those roles before and helped grown companies and then exited out of those companies successfully. We can bring a lot of that experience to the company. So that's generally what we do on the for-profit side. I'll hand it over to Kristi, because we had this multiplier of multipliers. We also kind of said, wait a second, we can do this on the nonprofit side. So we set up we have a donor advised fund and a foundation that we set up through the National Christian Foundation. And we do this where we seed into the companies. And Kristi, why don't you give that?
We do something very similar with the ministries that we're involved in. We have the same filters, but we advise their team on how to help them scale. That's really our sweet spot, where we help get to seed into them and brainstorm and strategize on how to best take it to new levels. Many of them want to continue to grow and scale or multiply their efforts across multiple places. And that's where our giftings are. So we get the same thing in our ministry work, help advise and scale on strategy.
And so some of those are on our website. We've worked with Married for a Purpose. They had several coaches when we started with them. They've now grown to over 100. We've worked with Mission India, helping them grow programs in India. We've worked with Pastors Collective, which is a pastors retreat center, helping refresh and revitalize pastors, keeping them from burnout. Am I missing one?
And just a couple of the churches that we're involved with as well, because we live in both the North and the South, and we have both churches that we are part of every single Sunday. We're getting 2 services. We love it. But we've helped and assist in both those areas as well.
Wow, how exciting. I think the filter that really like hit me in my heart the most was the one where it has to move the needle forward, not only financially, but spiritually and relationally. Can you both talk to that a little bit? I love that.
Well, we've made mistakes, not very often. It was pre-filters, let's say that, where we had a partnership that we really didn't feel, we were in partnership with them, which we bought into the company, and didn't feel relationally or financially we were in alignment on where to best go with the company. Mm-hmm. We thought we were early on, but it became apparent over working with them for about a year that we were not in alignment on how to grow and scale the model. And we came to the agreement that if our time and their time, quite frankly, is more valuable than having us butt heads, that it was best to part ways. And so that was an area where we weren't moving the needle spiritually, financially, or relationally, and we parted ways. We're not working with a company today that's happening. It probably helped with our filters that we feel like we're having an impact in all 3 of those areas and all of the partnerships we have today, and we're blessed because of that.
Beautifully stated. We've said this, we're multipliers of multipliers. Where did that come from? Is this your mission statement? Is this a purpose that you're living? How did you come up with that? Because I love that.
Some of it came, again, I'll kind of take it maybe from the practical side. But because we've run organizations and hired staffs and multiplied companies on the franchising side, a lot of our skills lie in that area. Mm-hmm. And some of the wisdom, as Kristi said, some of the mistakes we've made in the past, some of our failures are our best learnings. So those are the areas they can be applied best. And so the multiplier of multiplier concept came about that, all right, well, if we have those skills, I could be one-on-one, maybe with a CEO. Maybe it would be in my own company. I'm helping that man or woman in my own company. And so that's helping enrich us. Well, that's something you might do anyway. I can even see Jesus saying something like, well, the heathens would do that anyway, just to make more money. Right? Well, how are you any different? And so where I can take those skills and apply it at a higher level, like helping the marriage ministry grow, when they have 100 coaches that are doing multiple marriages a year, mm-hmm. Just several years later, we're able to help seed into that couple. Now they have 100 coaches. Soon they'll have 1,000 coaches. Soon they'll hit their goal of 1 million marriages. All of a sudden, that is multiplying the multiplier. That's helping. We didn't really set up a franchise there, but we took a lot of the experience and skills and applied it there, and then are multiplying the multiplier. The Pastors Retreat Center, there are some big national Christian groups that are willing to put in funding to help grow those centers. They're looking and seeing how refreshed these pastors are becoming, and then the aftercare that they're providing. And Chick-fil-A is one of the groups, incredible group that family is helping pay for the aftercare for these pastors. and it's a really great program. I mean, the reviews on the program are off the chart, and it's helping save these pastors. And so if we can do more of that, and some of these other groups that want to pay for other retreat centers, we're trying to help create kind of a franchise model, or like the secret sauce of creating more of these retreat centers and helping build that. So we feel we're able to multiply the multipliers. And that's kind of where that came from, that
Well,
the Bible talks about almost that geometric growth, the hundredfold. The hundredfold growth is kind of what we're looking for.
and it did come out of wanting to get deeper into working into God helping us figure out what our greater purpose was. And that worked together with our married ministry partners and with the Christian coaching organization that we're part of. It became a multiplier of multipliers. That's where it first originally came from. And then that evolved from there.
Beautiful.
The ripple effect.
Yeah, I gotta say, just that moved me. By the way, I'm a missionary's daughter, stationed abroad for 17 years during the 50s and 60s, right, and early 70s. And when you talk about this burnout, I saw it with my mother and my father. My father, saving lives, helping the community, doing what he needed to do. And my mother burned out because her husband wasn't there because he was saving others, right? And she's handling 4 children, living abroad, no family. She was burnt out. And sadly, it caused a divorce. And so if we can, it's just horrible that those things happen when you have both individuals burning out. So this ministry you have, I think, is just a beautiful thing, and moves me, because it probably could have saved my parents and our family had they had that, instead of a short furlough every 5 years. That's not enough to reach.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk about the marketplace. Do you see the marketplace and franchising as a ministry?
We do. In fact, we are working on a faith and franchising movement that we believe. I think Billy Graham, toward the end of his life, had made the comment that the next great movement of God will be in the marketplace. And I have the belief that on some levels, again, I don't want to sound negative, but on some levels, our government has let us down a little bit. Some of our healthcare has let us down. The schools have let us down. We get let down in a lot of different areas, and even some of the churches can let us down from time to time. But people tend to trust the entrepreneurs in the economy. And in franchising, the entrepreneurs that are out providing jobs and caring for their flock, if we can equip them as faith leaders, and they're naturally following a formula because they're already in franchising. And so if we can equip them as faith leaders and help them to do better and help their people and do it and share faith, the marketplace is actually an open area that I think is ripe for growth for franchise faith leadership. And so we're working on a little bit of that now as a movement.
Wow. All right. Both of you. This question goes to both of you. And Tracy, interrupt me if I'm getting off track here, hon. Kristi, if you would look back on your life, what advice today would you give your younger self? And the same question for you, Todd, but I do want to start with Kristi. What advice would you give your younger self?
Well, just a couple of days ago, I happened to be reviewing a webinar that Patrick Lencioni put out. Was on his newest book, and it was regarding what really motivates the motives of a leader. And it took me to a time where you're reflecting upon what your leadership is and what your motives are. And that may change over time from your earlier self to your later self. And because we're part of franchising, it could be the franchisor's motives of the leadership team there and why they are leaders. Could be franchisees and the leaders for their organizations. And we all have constituents we're working with, could be our shareholders or private equity that we might be working with. And I think it's extremely important to always remember what we're doing. And if it doesn't come from the heart, that we have a passion for caring for what we're doing, and that means caring for people, we probably should be checking our motives, because it's going to affect our leadership. And Patrick's book that he was referring to those things was, if your motives aren't in the right reasons as a leader, you probably need to rethink where you are in the organization then, or get refocused on what motivates you from the heart and taking care of others. So I really appreciated that, because if you look back at your younger self, you probably didn't necessarily have the motives all in the right reasons. You're just established yourself as a young career person and don't know where your motives are coming from. They're probably evolving over time. And I think that was helpful for a young leader or a more mature leader to always know where your motives are, so that remains in where your heart needs to be aligned as well.
Beautiful. Tracy, I want you to comment on what Kristi just said, because I know a lot of your coaching is around these motives and these values.
It's funny that you're asking me, because what was going through my mind is, kind of to paraphrase a certain part of what Kristi just said. It's really important to have the right people in the right seats on the bus, because if you're not passionate, I'll give you an example. Todd was saying how Kristi is great with operations. Well, if you take her and you drop her in Tom's seat in finance, she won't be happy there. She might do an okay job, but she's not going to thrive. She's not going to bring her best self to work. She's not going to, come with the same zest that she comes to the business for the, with the operations. So I think that a lot of what Kristi was talking about has to do with, the areas where you really excel, the areas that you're really wildly passionate about in business. Part of the work that I do, right? Getting the right people in the right seats. And I love it. I light up.
Yeah.
So I really feel what you're talking about.
And yet Todd and Kristi share the same vision. They have the same values, but God has gifted them with different talents, right? And the coming together creates the greater whole. Which then,
and their own purpose. They each have their own purpose for doing what they do, but it drives them to the same place, but to be complementary to each other. It's beautiful.
Thank you for sharing that, Tracy. Todd, let's go to you, and then we're going to wrap up. If you were to give advice to your younger self, what would it be?
It would be, and this is something that I've really kind of had to work on my whole life, but I can remember as a younger man just striving so hard on something, just wanting to do it myself, my own way, driven toward this, driven toward success, and there were a number of different points I look back on, and God was knocking on my noggin to lean into him a little bit more, listen more for his voice, quiet it down a little bit. And it took me a long time to figure out that I could actually thrive in his arms and listen to his voice more clearly than try to strive and do it on my own. And so I would think, maybe I need to be in a different company, or maybe if they had different leadership, or maybe if they had this, or maybe if I did that, or if I worked harder and whatnot. And God's not asking for any of that. He was really kind of asking for my heart, and then leaning into him on all decisions. And as I started to learn that a little bit later in life, in even some of the filters, and Kristi being such a blessing in my life, and so many things, it's really helped me to slow down, to think about things, to seek him first. He'll add everything else unto us. That's a verse. It's a promise. And you can really thrive in him and abide in him. And it's really great. His burden is light and easy. His yoke is easy. And it took me a long time to figure that out. And it's still, I'm a work in progress, but don't always do it. But it's gotten a lot better.
Excellent. Yeah, I have that same thing. I haven't quite learned that completely. It makes me wonder, as humans, what we get out of that striving. Is it pride? Is it I did it on my own? I'm self-made? You know, what is that all about when there's really an easier
Yeah. Well,
It's hard to give up control.
You bring up a great point. It is control. It is a lot of the American way is, I built this and self-made person, a Horatio Alger story, you know, and all that. And you know what? When you really kind of go back through some of the biblical heroes, a lot of them were real broken people, but they learned to listen to God, and they went and did some amazing things through him just by listening, by being faithful and leaning into him, and things they'd never be able to do on their own. And so that's kind of the key, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, we could have this conversation for hours, but we're at the top of the hour. I want to thank both of you for joining Tracy and myself today. This was a robust, insightful conversation. We appreciate everything you've done in the franchise space, and looking forward to what this union is going to continue to do, and what obviously 320 Group is going to do going forward.
Yeah. Which, by the way, stands for Ephesians 3:20 is how our company is named, which is unto him our Heavenly Father, unto him who is able to do exceedingly and abundantly beyond what we could ever ask or imagine. To him be the glory. And so it's to God be the glory.
We appreciate the opportunity. Thanks so much, Tracy and Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tracy, anything else on your end, hon?
Yeah, I'd like to say, I'd like to say that it takes a lot of courage to talk about God, especially in the workplace. It does. And I appreciate the fact that the two of you are, I can appreciate the fact that the two of you are keeping that conversation going and driving it forward.
Thank you.
Agreed, Tracy.
God.
Thank you. And to the rest of you listening in today to the Franchise Woman podcast, make sure to share this interview with Kristi and Todd, like, comment, and of course, join us again next week for another episode of the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged.